Welcome to Flash Fiction from Giant's Reach by Steve Cook. I'm super happy that I've made it through to the next round of the NYC Midnight Flash Fiction Challenge. To make it through this far, I've had to do well enough in both the first and second rounds, and considering the second round happened on the weekend I was supposed to be LARPing, I'm pretty pleased to have made it this far. So, wish me luck with that. In the meantime, here's a bit of flash fiction about characters that I keep coming back to again and again. Captain Gita of the Gaib Cat Soldiers and her band of elite soldiers. Enjoy. Patrol. Gita grunted as she took the brunt of the attack, only just parrying it away. The man opposite her, snarling dog helmet framing a face shiny with sweat, pulled his arm down and around for another swing. As soon as his arms went over, Gita moved. She dived forward, sliding down his side and past the line of his attack. Unable to stop his momentum, the dog soldier twisted his body towards her as his longsword began its descent. Too late. In one swift movement, Gita's sword point found the gap between helmet and chainmail, sinking in with a crunch. A gout of blood blossomed, dribbling down the metal rings, and her opponent slumped. The blood pulsed in her ears as she pulled her sword free and looked around the battlefield. The ground was littered with bodies, most of them Purkoy dog soldiers. The patrol they had happened upon were almost all dead, but more than a few Gaib greens and browns lay among them. The nearest Purkoy still on his feet was a short distance away, duelling back and forth with one of her own. Lewis, although it was hard to tell under the blood. Neither could see her. Gita swore softly, then stabbed her sword into the ground at her feet and sprinted towards them. At the last moment she leapt, slamming both feet into his side. They both went down, the Purkoy's helmet making a dull thunk as it hit the ground. Immediately, Lewis knelt and put as much weight on the dog soldier as he could. "You okay, Captain?" Gita nodded, staggering to her feet. "Are you?" Lewis looked down at himself and grinned. "None of it's mine. First thing Paula did was tear a dog's jugular all over me." "Where is Paula?" Gita looked around. "Where are any of the cats?" "They're off chasing the dogs, I think," Lewis said. He turned the downed Purkoy soldier over and took the fearsome helmet from his head. The man was bleeding freely from a wound to his forehead, but was out cold. The battle was over, almost as soon as it had begun, and an eerie quiet settled over Gita's unit as they took stock. "Check those that are down," Gita said to Lewis. "Heal anyone you can. Full report in 10 minutes. Meanwhile," she nodded down at their prisoner, "I'm going to get some answers." In short order, she had dragged the Purkoy soldier over to a tree, tied his arms behind it with her belt, and was slapping him awake. "Come on, time to face the music," she muttered. He gasped, eyes opening wide, and instinctively strained at his bonds. "What? No!" Gita snarled. "I asked the questions. What are you doing in our lands? Who are you?" The soldier spat to the side, a tooth mixed with blood and phlegm, and shook his head. "Sergeant Meadows, Purkoy, 3rd Company. I answer to Duke Purkoy." "You're deep enough in that you've been here a day, or more. What are you doing?" Meadows looked past her at the dead. Gita followed his gaze towards where Lewis was directing some of the others to lay the dead out side by side. "This wasn't supposed to happen," Meadows said flatly. "What was supposed to happen?" "I promised the lads we'd have a place to be safe. Might have helped if I'd paid a bit more attention to the map," Meadows said. "We were going to make a life somewhere else, you know. Mercenary work, maybe, or something simpler. All we had to do was get to the Confederacy." Realization dawned. "You're deserters." "Things are bad. Back home," the burly man said. "We ain't got enough food. The lads, they haven't been paid for 2 months. We sided with the wrong folk in the war is what happened. And now? His brow creased in a frown. Are any of them alive? Gita looked over at Lewis, but he was shaking his head. Some of mine are in there too, Gita said, turning back. They panicked, Meadows said. Plain and simple. We knew we couldn't engage anyone. No one would give us safe passage, and no one harbours deserters. The dogs, they might still get away. His gravelly voice trailed off before he shook his head. I'm sorry for your losses. At least I can give you that, and them. He met Gita's eye and raised his chin, exposing his neck. Do it. Gita held his gaze for a moment, and then, without changing expression, pulled her sword out of her sheath, and in one movement brought it around and through the man's neck. His body slid down to join the men that had been under his command. She closed her eyes and shook her head. Such a waste, she muttered.
You've been listening to flash fiction written for my Patreon, Giant's Reach. If you'd like to become a supporter, go to patreon.com/Giant's Reach, where you can find more fiction just like this,